My name is Nora Caldwell, and I was 32 the year I found out what a manila folder could do to a family. My grandmother turned 79 on a Saturday in October. She baked her own cake, vanilla with buttercream roses, her specialty since before I was born. She set the table for 8, paper napkins, the good plates, dried hydrangeas cut from her own garden. Nobody came. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother texted at 4:15. "Happy birthday, Gran, skiing is amazing." My father didn't text at all. My mother posted a goggles selfie to her church group chat with one word: blessed. I drove 3 hours from Hartford after my shift and found her sitting alone at that table. Candles melted into the frosting. The ice cream had gone soft in its carton. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. "Cut her a slice." Sing. The next day, while I was helping her tidy the house, 2 strangers knocked on the door and handed me a sealed folder, thick, signed in my grandmother's own handwriting. What came out of that folder ended my family as I knew it. "Welcome back. This is where ordinary people draw quiet lines that change everything, and dignity always gets the final word. If a story about standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves speaks to you, drop a comment and subscribe." That evening is pressed into me like a thumbprint in wet clay. I'd left Hartford at 5, still in my work flats, a gas station bouquet riding on the passenger seat. 3 hours on I-95, then the back roads through Briarwood where the oaks arch over the pavement like a cathedral ceiling. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:12. Porch light on. Every other window dark. Inside, the table told the whole story. Place settings. A centerpiece of dried hydrangeas she'd arranged that same morning. The cake in the middle, vanilla buttercream roses. 79 spelled out in pink gel, candles burned to waxy nubs. A carton of Neapolitan had sweated through onto the tablecloth. She sat at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands folded around a glass of water. "Nora." She smiled then frowned. "Is it Tuesday?" "It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday." "Oh." She touched the cake. "I thought I was baking this for the church sale." I set the flowers in a mason jar and fixed her a plate. We ate cake with our fingers because neither of us wanted to bother with forks. I sang happy birthday twice, because halfway through the first round she asked me to start over. At 10 I carried her to bed. She weighed almost nothing. Her wrist was the width of a paper towel roll. As I tucked the quilt to her chin, her hand shot out and caught mine. Her eyes sharpened, suddenly focused, like a radio catching signal through static. "They think I don't notice," she whispered. I waited for more. She was already asleep. "Let me tell you where I stand in this family. The Caldwells are a particular flavor of Connecticut comfortable. My father, Gregory, managed regional accounts for an insurance brokerage until he could golf 3 times a week and call it consulting. My mother, Diane, ran charity galas and sat on the library board. My brother Aaron ran a small development firm, Aaron Caldwell Properties, and drove a German sedan worth more than my annual salary. Then there's me, the paralegal. I work at a 4-person elder law firm in Hartford. Wills, trusts, guardianship filings. $47,000 a year, studying for the bar at night. My family calls me the paperwork one. At holidays, Diane would tilt her head and say, "Nora's still doing her little legal assistant thing," like I was selling friendship bracelets at a farmer's market. I never argued. I read fine print for a living. But that house was mine in every way that mattered and none that counted on paper. I took my first steps on that kitchen linoleum. Lorraine taught me to read a lease on the back porch when I was 19, reading glasses on her nose, a red pen between her teeth. She co-signed my first apartment because my parents wouldn't. I slept in the guest room that night, tracing the same ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6. Around midnight I got up for water. On the hallway shelf, tucked behind a framed family photo, I found a business card. Brenda Voss, Voss and Dean Realty, with a handwritten note on the back. Comp value $680,000. Quick, close, possible. Put the card back. My hands were steady. My stomach wasn't. Sunday morning I cleaned the kitchen while she dozed in her recliner. Cake into Tupperware. Melted candles into the trash. Buttercream wiped off the good plates. 10:15 someone knocked. 2 people stood on the porch. A woman around 60. Silver bob, wool coat, leather briefcase. A younger man beside her carrying a notary seal in a zippered pouch. Nora Caldwell? The woman asked. I'm Ruth Adler. This is my colleague Nathan Pute. Your grandmother retained my firm 14 months ago. She held out a manila folder, sealed with a wax paper flap, my grandmother's name printed on the tab in blue ink. She asked us to deliver this to you personally when the time came. When the time came for what? Ruth glanced through the screen door at the recliner. Her expression softened by a degree. Come to my office when you're ready. Here's my card. Don't discuss this with your parents before we talk. They were pulling away before I could form a second question. I stood there holding the folder. Heavier than it looked. Maybe 40 pages. The seal crossed with Lorraine's own signature, looping and deliberate, the same hand she used on birthday cards and Christmas checks. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Who was at the door? Don't sign anything, Nora. I turned the phone face down and carried the folder inside. I sat at that same kitchen table and ran my finger along the sealed flap. I recognized every curve of her signature, the exaggerated tail on the capital L, the double loop on the lowercase r. Not a shaky mark. Written by a woman who knew exactly what she was putting her name on. Broke the seal. Inside, legal documents I recognized instantly from my own work. A recorded deed. A trust instrument. A durable power of attorney. Notarized witness pages. A physician's letter on hospital letterhead, dated 14 months earlier. Clipped to the front, a handwritten note on her cream stationery. Same deliberate blue ink. Nora, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. Love you. Sorry. It has to be you. I read it 3 times. Each time, when they come for the house landed harder. Not if. She'd known. 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad, before she started calling me by my mother's name, before the stove got left on, before the day she got lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away. She'd known someone would come for the house. And she'd prepared. I didn't sleep that night. The folder sat on the nightstand while I listened to the house breathe. Monday morning I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Something told me to stay. I found the lockbox while taking out the recycling. A realtor's combination box clamped to the gas meter, tucked behind the hydrangea bushes, just out of sight from the front walk. I'd seen these on every listing in Briarwood. Someone had been showing this house. Inside a pile of unsorted mail on the hallway table, I found an off-market listing sheet on Voss and Dean Realty letterhead. Same Brenda Voss from the card behind the photo frame. 4 bedrooms, original hardwood, quarter-acre lot, listed at $680,000. $50,000 under the last comparable sale in the neighborhood. In the kitchen junk drawer, the worst of it. A purchase agreement, unsigned but filled in. Buyer. Stonewall Capital Group LLC, cash offer, 30-day close. Seller's line blank, but someone had penciled L. Caldwell underneath in block letters, like a rehearsal. Listing agent, Brenda Voss. Seller's representative, Aaron Caldwell. My brother. I sat on the kitchen floor and spread it all out like a paper mosaic. The lock, the listing sheet, the contract, the card, a sticky note in Diane's handwriting. Closing target, November 15th. 3 weeks away. I called my mother that evening. Oh, Nora. Diane's voice had that bright, managing warmth she used on parish volunteers and restaurant hostesses. How's Gran doing? We had the most wonderful time in Aspen. There's a lockbox on her gas meter. 2 seconds of silence. 3. Sweetheart, that's being handled. Dad and Aaron have been working with a lovely agent on a transition plan. You know she can't keep up this house on her own. There's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer. Nora. The warmth dropped a register. This is a family decision between your father, your brother, and me. We've been managing Gran's affairs for months. You don't need to worry about the details. She doesn't know the house is being sold, does she? She knows what she needs to know. A pause, a clink of a wine glass. Erin's company is in a difficult stretch. The house can fund proper care for Gran and get your brother through this. It's the responsible thing. It's her house, Mom. Nora. The register dropped again, all the way to the basement. Cold. Final. Your grandmother has dementia. She leaves the stove on. She got lost driving to the post office. She is not the person who should be making decisions about a $680,000 asset. Then, she won't remember the house by Christmas. The line hummed between us. Then it's a good thing I remember, I said and hung up. I picked up the folder and Ruth Adler's card and held them side by side under the kitchen light. Tomorrow I'd drive to Hartford. Tonight I had reading to do. Ruth's office sat on the second floor of a converted brownstone. Faded rugs, framed diplomas, a small brass sign. Adler and Associates, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I'd called at 7:30 that morning. Her receptionist put me through in under a minute, which told me they'd been expecting the call. Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago, Ruth began. Once we were seated with a pot of tea and a box of tissues she placed between us without comment. Early August of last year. She'd had an episode. Got disoriented driving, ended up 2 towns over, couldn't find her way home. A neighbor brought her back. She called me the next morning. She already knew you. Her friend Dorothy had used our firm for a trust. Your grandmother came in alone. Focused. Ruth paused. She told me, my son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell the house the minute I can't stop her. She wanted to get ahead of it before she couldn't. Put my tea down. She chose you specifically, Ruth went on. She said you were the only one who'd fight for the house because you were the only one who understood what it meant. Ruth walked me through it piece by piece. 14 months ago, Lorraine had come in wearing pressed slacks and her pearl earrings, carrying her own folder deed, tax records, her 1998 will, a list of questions handwritten on yellow legal paper in that same looping blue ink. She was methodical, Ruth said. She told me she'd noticed the forgetting, names first, then appointments, then the route to the post office. Her doctor had used the phrase, early stage. She said she had maybe a year, maybe 2, before the window closed. The window for what? For making legally binding decisions while she still had capacity. Ruth turned a page. She wanted 2 things. First, to protect the house. Second, to choose who would protect her once she couldn't protect herself. And she didn't choose my father. No, Ruth said without inflection. She did not. The weight of that settled in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. My father was her only child. She'd raised him in that kitchen, paid for his first suit, danced at his wedding, and when it came time to hand someone the keys to her life, she'd driven right past him and gone straight to me. Because she knew Gregory would defer to Diane. She knew Diane would calculate. She knew Erin would need. Your grandmother executed these on August 9th, Ruth continued. Full capacity. Dr. Mercer, her neurologist, provided a written evaluation that same day confirming she understood exactly what she was signing. Ruth tapped the physician's letter. This is your foundation. The architecture was clean, and I recognized every instrument from my own work. First, a revocable living trust, the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, dated August 9th. The house, the deed, the title, all transferred in. Lorraine as trustee while she had capacity. Me as successor trustee the moment she lost it. Not my father. Not Erin. Me. Second, a durable power of attorney naming me as her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. Durable, meaning it didn't expire with incapacity, it activated because of it. Third, the physician's letter. Dr. Mercer had examined her on August 9th and documented full testamentary capacity. She understood the trust, understood the power of attorney, understood she was placing the house beyond anyone's reach except the granddaughter she trusted. So the house isn't hers anymore, I said. Technically correct. It belongs to the trust. She can't sell it as an individual. And no personal power of attorney granted to anyone else has authority over assets already inside that trust. Only the trustee can authorize a sale. And the trustee is me. Once Lorraine is determined to lack capacity. Yes. She studied me. Based on what you've described, the stove, the post office, the successor trustee provisions are likely already active. She leaned in. There's something else you should know. If your family had her sign anything recently, a new power of attorney, a listing agreement, while she lacked capacity, those documents may not be enforceable. She let that sit. They may have had her sign something newer. I drove back to Briarwood that evening. Porch light on, same as always. Through the front window I could see Lorraine in her recliner, television murmuring, reading glasses folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me at 16, the one she'd never given my parents. Gran. She looked up. 3 seconds. Her eyes were absolutely clear, not the soft confusion of most days, clear like creek water over gravel. You went to see Ruth, she said. You remember Ruth. I remember enough. She turned her reading glasses over in her hands. I remember I was scared and I went to a lawyer, and I told her what Diane would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Gran. Good. She reached for the glasses, then set them down again, as though she'd forgotten why. They've been bringing people through the house on Tuesdays, when the nurse is here. I hear the doors. Strangers in my kitchen. I know. Your father won't look at me when he visits. He talks to the walls. Her lips pressed together. Aaron brought papers. I don't remember what I signed. I took her hand. It doesn't matter what you signed. You already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers, her grip thin but deliberate. I'm not gone yet, Nora. The words hung in the air, fragile and fierce. By tomorrow she might not remember saying them. I would remember for both of us. Aaron showed up Wednesday. He never knocked. He walked in with his keys jingling and his smile already switched on, the way he entered every room like it should be grateful he'd arrived. Hey, Nor. He kissed the top of my head, smelling of cedar cologne and leather upholstery. Checking in on Gran. That's sweet. He opened the fridge, cracked a sparkling water, leaned on the counter like he owned it. Taking some time off from the paralegal gig. He said paralegal the way you'd say hobby. Aaron, I know about the listing. The can paused halfway to his mouth. One beat. Then the smile adjusted. Warmth to negotiation. Look, I know it seems fast. Here's the thing, the company's in a rough patch. Balloon payment coming due in 8 weeks. $740,000. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. 3 years of work gone. So you're selling Gran's house. I'm helping the family manage an asset she can't manage herself. He set the can down. The money solves everything, Nora. Gran gets a nice facility. Mom and Dad stop worrying. Keep my business. Everybody wins. Except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is. She knows people are walking through her house. His jaw tightened and he stepped closer. Don't make this difficult. Or family. Family helps family. Is that what you told her when you brought the papers? He stared at me, then the smile came back, harder now. Performative. It's basically sold already. The closing's set. He left the empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I found what they'd actually had her sign, buried in the hallway credenza behind old magazines. A power of attorney dated September 3rd, barely 2 months old, naming Gregory Caldwell as agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it, a listing authorization from the same date, giving Aaron the right to act as seller's representative. I laid both beside the originals from Ruth's folder, and the difference hit me before I'd even finished unfolding the pages. Lorraine's trust documents from 14 months earlier. Strong pen pressure, clean confident loops, every letter connected, that distinctive tail on the capital L. This was the woman who'd written grocery lists in cursive and signed my permission slips with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney. Trembling lines. The L barely rose above the baseline. Gaps between letters where the flow should have been. Not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing, the hand of a woman being told where to press down. I checked the date against my phone. September 3rd was the exact week Lorraine had been taken to the ER after a fall. I remember Diane's text at the time. Gran took a tumble, nothing serious, she's resting, and thought nothing of it. The discharge summary I later found in the mail pile read, patient disoriented, intermittent confusion, recommend neurological follow-up. They'd had her sign a power of attorney the same week she was hospitalized for confusion. I photographed everything and called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not the office, the house. She said it mattered that we lay it out on Lorraine's own kitchen table. And I understood why the moment she did. Old maple, scratched from 50 years of Thanksgivings, coffee ring stained. Now it held 5 documents in a row, edges squared like evidence at a hearing. 1. The recorded trust deed, filed with the Briarwood town clerk on August 12th of the previous year. The house, legally in the trust for over a year. Public record. 2. The durable power of attorney naming me, executed the same day, 2 witnesses, notarized by Nathan Pute. 3. Dr. Mercer's capacity letter. Mrs. Caldwell demonstrates full understanding of the nature and consequences of the legal instrument she is executing. She is oriented to time, place, and person. 4. The September power of attorney naming Gregory. Shaky signature. No capacity evaluation. No independent witness. Executed during a documented week of medical confusion. 5. The listing agreement. Aaron as seller's rep, Brenda Voss as agent, priced $50,000 under comparable homes. Ruth stood across from me, hands flat on the table. The house has been in the trust for over a year. Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The September power of attorney, even if valid, doesn't grant authority over trust assets. And given the medical record, it almost certainly isn't valid at all. She looked at me. This sale cannot close. The house was never theirs to sell. I stared at the 2 signatures side by side, one strong, one trembling, and at the physician's letter drawing a hard line between the woman Lorraine had been and the woman they'd tried to take advantage of. She won't remember the house by Christmas. Diane's voice echoed. But Lorraine had remembered first. Before any of them. Ruth and I built a plan. Quiet, methodical, built on paper instead of anger. Step 1. A current capacity evaluation, something a court would accept, confirming Lorraine lacked the mental ability to sign the September power of attorney. I called Dr. Mercer's office Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes, then came back with a careful, practiced tone people use to deliver bad news wrapped in protocol. I'm sorry, Miss Caldwell, but we've received a request to restrict access to Mrs. Caldwell's medical records. Restrict access from whom? I can't disclose that. But the request came in about 6 weeks ago. It specifies records aren't to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact. Who's the designated contact? Was Gregory Caldwell. They'd locked me out of her own medical records. I sat in the clinic parking lot with my forehead against the wheel. 6 weeks ago, mid-September, right after they'd gotten her to sign. They hadn't just gotten a signature. They'd built a wall around her. I called Ruth. They restricted her records. Expected, she said, unsurprised. We'll file a HIPAA authorization under the durable POA. Yours predates theirs and names you healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. 2 days later I had the records. Dr. Mercer agreed to a current evaluation. The system worked, slowly but it worked. Diane came to the house that Thursday evening, no flowers, no food. Just a brochure. Maple Glen Assisted Living. She spread it on the same table where Ruth and I had laid out the documents days earlier. It's a beautiful facility, Nora. Private rooms, a garden, activities every afternoon. Gran doesn't want to leave her house. Gran doesn't know what she wants. She smoothed the brochure with both palms. Your father and I have been looking for weeks. If we move her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house staged and listed by December 1st. You're staging the house for the buyer you already have. Her expression flickered, the briefest crack in the plaster. Nora, I know this is emotional for you. You've always been attached to this house. But your brother's company is in real trouble, and this family needs to pull together. By selling a 79-year-old woman's home out from under her? After everything I've done for this family. Her voice cracked. Real tears or rehearsed ones, I couldn't tell anymore. After 32 years I'd stopped trying to. The papers are all ready with the title company, she said. Closing is November 15th. This is happening, Nora. She left the brochure on the table. I almost walked away that night. It would have been easier. But if you've ever watched someone decide an older person's worth comes with an expiration date, you already know why I didn't. If this is hitting close to home, type I see her in the comments, and subscribe so you're here for the closing table. The closing was set for November 15th at Capital Title Services, 3 blocks from the Briarwood Town Green. Diane had booked it like a dinner reservation. Efficient, final, non-negotiable. Ruth laid out 2 options. 1. File an emergency probate petition to block the sale outright. Effective but public, slow, and it would give Aaron and Diane time to scramble, hire counsel, muddy the record. 2. Let the closing happen, walk in with the documents, and let the truth do what truth does when it meets paperwork that can't survive it. If you show up with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, Ruth said, the title company does the work for you. They can't insure a title that's in dispute. They won't close. And if anyone pushes anyway, title officers carry personal liability. No officer with sense records a deed they know is defective. She took off her glasses. This is the quieter path. No courtroom. Just documents on a table, in front of witnesses. I thought about Lorraine's note. When they come for the house, open this. She hadn't told me to go to court. She'd given me a folder. Let the documents talk. 9 days. I went home and started counting. Day 1. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services from my car outside the municipal building. The intake worker was patient and completely unsurprised by anything I described. She'd heard this shape of story before. Different names, same architecture. We'll assign an investigator, she said. You'll get a case number within 72 hours. I mentioned the closing was 9 days out. I'll flag it as time sensitive. That evening a voicemail from Ruth. Something interesting. APS told me informally that yours isn't the first report on this situation. Someone filed an anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago. No contact info, so it went nowhere at the time. But the file exists. 6 weeks ago. Right when they'd had Lorraine sign the September paperwork. Someone else had seen it happening and hadn't been brave enough to leave a name, but had cared enough to call. The system was slower than anger. But it was building. Day 4. My father came alone in the 10-year-old Buick he used for errands, not the car he drove to church. He sat behind the wheel a long time before getting out. Smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door the way he had since he was a boy, and stood in the kitchen looking at the cabinets his mother had refinished herself. She used to sing in this kitchen, he said, barely above a whisper. Patsy Cline, every Sunday morning. I remember. He sat, hands flat on the maple table, and they shook. I know what you think of me, he said. I didn't want any of this. Aaron's in over his head. Diane says the house is the only way. And Mom. His voice cracked, a hairline fracture in a foundation. Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad. He looked at me for one trembling second. I saw the boy who'd grown up in that kitchen, who'd been carried to bed by the same woman sleeping in the next room. His phone buzzed. Then he stood. I should go. He left through the back door without saying goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it away. Day 5. I bought a cake. A small 6-inch round, vanilla with buttercream, 1 candle instead of 79. I set it on the table at 3 o'clock, 2 plates, 2 forks. Gran, come sit. She saw the cake and stopped. Whose birthday? Yours. We're doing it over. He sat. I lit the candle. She looked at the flame the way you look at something you're trying to hold on to carefully, deliberately, as if staring hard enough might make it stick. "Make a wish," I said. She closed her eyes, blew it out on the first try. "What did you wish for?" She looked at me with those clear creek water eyes. "I wished you'd stay. We ate with forks this time." She told me about the hydrangeas she'd planted the year I was born, and how the kitchen table had come from her mother's house in Bridgeport on the back of a pickup truck in 1974, every scratch on it a Thanksgiving she'd won. Then she set her fork down and leaned toward me. "Don't let them take the table," she said. Quiet. Fierce. "I won't, Gran. The table stays." Day 6. The phone calls started. My father's cousin Caroline, careful and concerned. "Your mother says you're trying to take control of Lorraine's finances." She used the word, manipulating. Then my mother's parish friend. Then Aaron's business partner. Then a woman from the garden club. Each call carrying the same script in slightly different clothes. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. Nora doesn't understand the family's situation. Diane had shaped the story before I got a word in. I didn't correct it. I didn't post anything. Ruth had told me, "The documents speak, you don't have to." But at 9 that night my phone rang once more. Aunt June, Lorraine's younger sister, 81, still sharp, still in Bridgeport. "I don't believe a word Diane's saying, and I want you to know why. Your grandmother called me last August. Said she'd been to see a lawyer. Said she was putting the house in order while she still could. Said, if anything happens, back Nora up." "I'm backing you up," Aunt June said. "Whatever you need." Day 7. Ruth confirmed the closing details. Capital Title Services. 2 p.m., Conference Room B. The escrow officer, Linda Yates, 22 years in the business, thorough by the book. The buyer, Stonewall Capital Group, a regional firm that bought undervalued homes cheap and flipped them, represented by a man named Daniel Fahey. Brenda Voss as listing agent. Diane and Aaron as sellers. Gregory tagging along because Diane told him to. Ruth made one more off-record call and learned something that mattered. Linda flagged the file 3 weeks ago during the preliminary title search. She noticed the house sat in a trust. She contacted Brenda Voss for clarification, and Brenda sent over a signed affidavit claiming the trust had been dissolved and the property reconveyed to Lorraine individually. Linda accepted it provisionally, but noted no recorded reconveyance deed existed. The closing's been tentative all along, pending final title clearance. Brenda had lied to the title company. The trust had never been dissolved. The deed was still on record. The whole deal was standing on cracked ice, waiting for someone to set the original document on the table. Here's the thing about paperwork people underestimate. It doesn't raise its voice and it doesn't forget. If you've ever been the quiet one nobody took seriously, this next part's for you. Subscribe and stay with me to the closing table. 8. Everything in place. Ruth would attend as attorney of record for the trust, bringing certified copies of the deed, the power of attorney, and the capacity letter. Nathan as notary witness. APS investigator Sandra Weeks had confirmed the case was active and time-sensitive, even though she wouldn't be in the room. I spent the afternoon reviewing every document one more time. Trust deed, capacity letter, the shaking September signature, the listing agreement, the discharge summary. Every date, every signature, every medical note pointing the same direction. I practiced what I'd say. Short sentences. No accusations. No emotion. Just facts, delivered at the volume of an ordinary conversation. Ruth had coached me. You're not there to argue or convince anyone. You're there to present documents that speak for themselves. Let the title officer do the rest. I wasn't the daughter they'd ignored anymore. I wasn't the paperwork one. I was the successor trustee of the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, and I had every right to sit at that table. More than a right, an obligation. That night I sat with Lorraine while she worked a crossword in pen. No pencil, because pencils, she said, were for people who didn't trust themselves. Gran, tomorrow's a big day. 7 across. Legal instrument of protection, 5 letters. She wrote in trust. Smarty pants, I said, and she smiled. She reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out her leather glasses case, and handed me a folded note in her own shaky but legible hand. For Nora, the keeper of the table. Below it, a signature. Not the strong hand of a year ago, not the collapse of September. Something in between. Trembling but intentional. A woman at the edge of the window, still reaching for the glass. "I'm not gone yet," she said. I folded the note into my wallet. Capital Title Services occupied a single-story brick building with tinted windows and a polished brass handle. I parked across the street at 1:45. Ruth arrived at 1:50. Nathan was already inside. We walked in together, Ruth with her briefcase, me with the manila folder. Conference room B was small. An oval table, 10 chairs, a water pitcher, a humming printer. Linda Yates was arranging documents at the head of the table. She glanced at Ruth and paused. "Ms. Adler, I didn't see your firm listed on this transaction." "I represent the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust," Ruth said. "We have documents relevant to this closing." The pen in Linda's hand stopped moving. Diane came in first. Cashmere blazer, church pearls, a smile already fixed in place like a hostess arriving at her own party. Aaron followed, jaw set, a leather portfolio under his arm. Gregory trailed behind, gray-faced, staring at the floor. Then Brenda Voss with a fan of closing documents. And last, Daniel Fahy in a navy suit and a no-nonsense expression. Diane saw me and stopped cold. "Nora, what are you doing here?" "Taking a seat." I sat down. Ruth beside me. I set the manila folder on the table and waited. The printer went quiet. Linda looked at Ruth. "You said you have documents." "I do." Ruth laid 3 items on the table, one at a time, squared like evidence before a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed, filed with the Briarwood town clerk on August 12th of last year. It transfers the property at 14 Oakwood Lane into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. Ms. Caldwell is the successor trustee. Diane's smile fell in stages, like a building losing floors. Second, the durable power of attorney naming Ms. Caldwell as agent, executed August 9th, notarized, currently in effect. Aaron leaned forward. "We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes." Third, Ruth set down the physician's letter. Dr. Helen Mercer's capacity evaluation, dated August 9th, confirming Lorraine had full testamentary capacity when she executed these documents. I also have Dr. Mercer's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming Lorraine now lacks capacity, meaning anything she signed after her cognitive decline, including the September power of attorney your family obtained, was signed without the legal competence required to make it binding. The room went still. Linda picked up the trust deed, read it, checked it against her own title file, then looked at Brenda Voss. "Ms. Voss, you told me the trust had been dissolved." Brenda's face went white. I was told." "The trust was never dissolved," Ruth said. "The recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed." Linda squared the documents and said the 5 words that ended it. "I cannot close this transaction." She'd remembered everything. Daniel Fahy closed his portfolio. Brenda stared at the table. Aaron's knuckles blanched on the armrests. Diane looked at me like I'd pulled the house out from under her feet. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane broke it. "This is ridiculous." She stood, palms flat on the table, pearls swinging. "Nora is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's only child, and he has a signed power of attorney that gives him full control. A power of attorney signed by a woman hospitalized for confusion the same week," Ruth said, even. "A power of attorney with no capacity evaluation attached. And even if it were valid, it doesn't grant authority over assets already held in a trust. You can't do this." Aaron stood too, his voice raw now, no theater in it. "I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this falls through, Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations aren't this office's concern," Linda said. "This is my grandmother's house." It's the trust's house, Ruth corrected. Administered by the trustee your grandmother appointed. That trustee is sitting at this table. Aaron turned on me. You're going to destroy this family. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I'd practiced. Conversational. Teddy. You tried to sell a 79-year-old woman's home while she sat alone on her birthday eating cake nobody came for. You had her sign documents during a hospital stay. You lied to the title company about a dissolved trust. And you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family. Aaron's mouth opened, closed. Fists clenched at his sides. Diane was crying now, loud and messy. After everything I've done. Gregory hadn't spoken since he walked in. He stared at the trust deed, at his mother's signature, and I watched him do the math. She'd planned this. Gone around him. Looked at her only son and decided he wasn't enough. Daniel Fahey stood. I think we're done here. He nodded to Linda and walked out. Brenda gathered her things without meeting anyone's eyes. Ruth spoke into the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Lorraine Caldwell is currently active. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged. Any further attempt to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the trustee's authorization will be treated as a legal matter. Diane stopped crying. She looked at Ruth, then at me, tears still wet, her expression shifting from grief to something harder. You'll regret this. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family falls apart, you'll remember you did this. I stood, picked up the folder, put it in my bag. I looked at my mother. The cashmere, the pearls, the tears she'd learned to deploy like weather. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. I turned to Linda Yates. Thank you for your professionalism. I'll document this closing as void and flag the file, Linda said. You'll get confirmation by email. I walked out. Ruth followed. Nathan held the door. November air hit my face, cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk 10 full seconds before I remembered to breathe. Ruth touched my elbow. You did well. I did what she asked me to do. That's what I mean. I drove back to Oakwood Lane with the folder on the passenger seat, exactly where the gas station bouquet had sat 9 days earlier. The house was still there. The hydrangeas still lined the walk. The porch light was on. I found Lorraine asleep in her recliner, crossword in her lap, reading glasses on. I knelt beside her chair and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. It's done, Gran, I said. The house is safe. He stirred. Her hand found mine, the same thin grip, the same paper towel roll wrist. Her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then clearing for just a moment. Nora, did you keep the table? I laughed, a real one from somewhere deep. I kept the table. Good girl. She closed her eyes and was asleep again within a minute, breathing slow and even, the crossword rising and falling on her chest. I sat on the floor beside her recliner and looked through the doorway at the maple table, scratched and coffee-stained, standing where it had stood since 1974. The folder was in my bag. The note was in my wallet. The house was in the trust. For the first time in 9 days, the counting stopped. Here's what happened after. Aaron's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule. He missed it. The bank moved on his projects, 3 half-finished townhomes and a commercial lot, and Aaron Caldwell Properties filed Chapter 7 in January. He sold the German sedan. Last I heard, he was project managing for someone else's firm, at a third of what he used to make. He never called to apologize. Diane, standing in Briarwood, fractured slowly, the way reputations do in small towns. People talk. Aunt June talked. Linda Yates documented everything in the closing file. The church group chat went quiet around her. She stepped down from the library board. She and Gregory moved to a condo in West Hartford that spring. My father emailed once, in March. 3 sentences. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Some apologies arrived too late to be anything but a record of what a person already knew they should have said. APS substantiated the complaint. Over the following 3 months, through 2 uncontested probate hearings, the September power of attorney was formally voided. The court confirmed me as Lorraine's legal guardian and permanent trustee. I deferred my bar exam. I took a leave from the firm. I moved into the guest room at 14 Oakwood Lane, the one with the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6, and became the person who made sure Lorraine ate dinner, took her medication, and sat on the porch in the afternoons when the light came through the hydrangeas. It wasn't the career step I'd planned. It was the right one. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a cake, vanilla with buttercream, nothing fancy, and set it on the table from Bridgeport, the one that had survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and 1 attempted theft. Lorraine came in from the living room, crossword in hand. Whose birthday? Nobody's. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She sat, picked up a fork, took a bite and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, she said. It's good. Another bite. Don't change it. We ate in the afternoon light striping through the window, the prism still hanging above the sink, throwing small rainbows across the floor. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire when their memory does. And the quietest love in a family is sometimes the only one still keeping watch. That's my story. 1 empty birthday, 1 manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this reminded you to check on a loved one's directives, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.